All right, what's up, Jolly Bee Chicken Joys? Welcome to the 2 Minutes to Late Night podcast, Pod Minutes to Cast Night. You're here with 2 out of 5 members of the writing room for 2 Minutes to Late Night.
I'm Lucie Steiner, and whoever took Jordan, Katie, and Jeremy, we will pay you $2 and half of a caramello to bring them back. We miss them very much.
That's $1 each, one for Jeremy and Katie, and then the caramellos for Jordan.
Yeah. Well, Jordan is narrowly escaped death. He's had the flu, and then Jeremy and Katie are out this week, so we're doing our own thing.
Yeah, we're having a little fun, just the two of us. We're trying something different. Since Jeremy and Katie have their own podcast about Banjo-Kazooie or whatever, Lucie and I have our own podcast now called Drucy Fruit. And we're going to talk about fruit. Like pears and watermelon, all that good shit.
And we're going to talk mostly fruit, mostly in the context of still lifes, drawings of fruit.
Yeah. None of that pointillism bullshit. Fuck that.
Yeah. And we're going to take an album that Drew likes that I've never heard, and an album that I like that Drew's never heard, and we're going to talk about them. Yeah. And we're both pretty not familiar with the other one's artists, right? Like, I know I've never heard any Ozzy Osbourne. Have you heard any Bob Dylan?
Yeah. Well, so that's what we're doing. So Lucie is more on the folk side, and I'm more on the trash side. So we decided to do a little bit of a trade. I've never really listened to Bob Dylan. I know like I know his stupid fucking mustache. I know the whole thing about him going electric, and everybody hated it. But other than that, I think I only know like the 3 or 4 big hits that he had.
And what were those?
I knew Tangled Up in Blue.
And
I knew, but I never really listened to it. I knew, what's the one like Johnny's in the basement mixing up the medicine?
Oh yeah, Subterranean Homesick Blues.
Yeah, which sounds like an NES game, but it's a very old song. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty much all I know about Bob Dylan. He's got a Medal of Honor, I think, for killing people or something. I don't know. Obama was really happy. I think Obama gave him a drone.
I think he got a Medal of Honor for that women's underwear commercial that he was in.
He looked great, by the way.
Yeah.
Beautiful banana hammock, speaking of fruit.
No, yeah, actually, it turns out Barack Obama was kind of a Bob Dylan nerd. And he was like, apparently, like, Bob Dylan didn't say hi to him after he, like, played for him or something. And Barack Obama was like, that's so cool.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and then they killed Pakistani kids together.
Yeah. There's nothing cooler than ignoring the president, though. I gotta say, like...
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because ignoring God would be, like, one step higher, and that's pretty easy. We do it every day.
No, yeah, that is pretty cool. Or just, needlessly subversive and douchey. I always vacillate with Bob Dylan as a person in that way, because... sometimes, because I love his songwriting, like, I think he's a real poet, and, like, he's, I think, my favorite musician of all time. But then I'll see those old interviews with him that are supposed to be him, like, not selling out and being really cool. And when I watch them, I'm just like, I feel like he's just being childish. It's like, they're just here because they like your work. Just be nice to them.
Yeah. Isn't he? He's got to have, like, at least 3 divorces, right, at this point?
I think he has a few divorces. Yeah. This album is supposedly about his divorce from one of his wives, Sarah. Yeah. But then so is Desire, so maybe he didn't care about the other ones, I don't know.
So one of the things that we wanted to talk about was that we're going to do 2 completely different things and try to find the commonalities in them. And so Lucie gave me Blood on the Tracks by Bob Dylan, and I gave Lucie Blizzard of Oz by Ozzy Osbourne, which is a divorce album for Ozzy getting divorced from Black Sabbath.
Really?
Getting happily married to cocaine. What do you know about Ozzy Osbourne? Because we kind of talk about it a little bit on the podcast, but I know that you're not super familiar with him.
Yeah, we talked about it briefly on the Turbo episode. My only frame of reference for Ozzy Osbourne is that one time a 12-year-old Japanese kid played Crazy Train on the Ellen DeGeneres show. And it was sick. I really liked it.
Yeah, dude. Those 12-year-old Japanese kids are crazy.
Yeah, no, I remember, like, he played it, he shredded on it, it was really great. And then Ellen brought out Ozzy Osbourne, and he freaked out. And it made me tear up a little bit.
Yeah. Did you watch the show? Did you watch the Osbournes at all?
I did.
Yeah.
I was like, that was my other frame of reference for them, is that they were like the crazy reality show family.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think I knew at the time, I was like, it's kind of weird that they're doing this. Like, that they weren't the kind of family that should be doing a reality show. Yeah, I don't know what you want to start with, but I'm interested to know what your opinion on that reality show
was. The Osbournes? Well,
yeah.
I haven't watched it in a really long time, but like when it came out, I was I was old enough to be a Japanese boy playing on Ellen, and so that was like, to me, that was really weird because I think that was the first real exposure to reality TV, because everybody kind of forgets that like the Osbournes were before the Kardashians. Like that was the real, like, oh, we're just going to follow somebody around with a camera, a TV show to like take off, other than like it wasn't even like a Survivor where it's like a game show. Like it was just literally like, what do these rich people do when they're bored? And so like when that came out, like I was probably my peak. Like I think Ozzy Osbourne is the coolest thing on earth. And watching his just like kind of normal, banal life just like really bugged me a little bit, because it was like painting him away from this Prince of Darkness and more of just like this shitty dad. Yeah. Yeah,
I remember a lot of it seemed to be like, it was I think that was the first reality show I ever remember seeing. And I do remember it being like very strange to just like be sitting on a couch watching a family watch television.
Yeah, that's all it is. I didn't watch it religiously. I watched like maybe 12 episodes, 13 episodes, but I don't remember like any episode where they're like, oh, we're prepping for Ozfest, so we're talking to anybody kind of relevant in the time right now. It mostly was just kind of like, yep, we're in the living room, and occasionally you get to see Ozzy Osbourne in his bed.
But is it true that, because I've heard this, but I don't know how accurate it is, I've heard that Sharon Osbourne was kind of like his manager.
Oh, yeah.
Like, kind of like became his manager at a certain point. Is that...
Oh, yeah. Well, so the story goes that Ozzy, when he went solo, no one wanted to sign him, and Sharon's dad had a record label and signed him and made Sharon be his manager. So she was like his mom before she was his wife.
Oh, wow.
And Sharon is like very well known for like being the one who put together Ozfest, and also kind of being a huge bitch.
Oh, yeah.
Like she,
Cool.
I forgot what band it was. I don't remember, but supposedly like she sabotaged somebody's show. I think it was Iron Maiden. I think she sabotaged an Iron Maiden show because they were assholes to her. And like had people had the screens turn off while they were performing, and had people in the audience throw fruit at them. Weird stuff.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What about Bob Dylan's reality show? You get to see Bob Dylan yell at his neighbors.
Yeah. It's also called Blood on the Tracks. It's about him. He becomes a racetrack bookie. Yeah. I would love to watch a reality show about Bob Dylan, probably for about 2 seconds, because like when you listen to him, it's like sometimes he's the only artist I enjoy where I feel like I'm seeing the boring work ethic in the music. It's like, yeah. Like I'm like, this song is so great, and it must have been so boring. It must have been such a trudge to actually write it. Like, he's contextualized by like the 60s and like all the craziness. He wasn't, at least that I know of, a big drinker. He didn't really smoke pot. Like, there's that one story one time about him smoking pot with the Beatles, I think. But then other than that, he was just kind of a clean, like, guy who just wrote a lot. And, all the documentaries, any, like, documentary footage that you see of him is just kind of, like, other people trying to get him his attention while he is trying to write something. Yeah. He's just kind of, like, you could tell he's just, like, kind of a workaholic. And it kind of shows in the music, but it's still exciting to listen to. But, like, you can feel vicariously him being, in the boring process of creating it,
So we did, so I listened to Blood on the Tracks, which, by the way, did you know that there's a collection of like Bob Dylan bootlegs that he like officially endorses? And so
yes.
bootleg sequel to this album is called More Blood, More Tracks.
What? Wait, I did not know
It came out last year. It came out in November. It's not a joke. It's a Bob Dylan endorsed album called More Blood, More Tracks. I guess Too Fast, Too Blood on the Tracks was already taken or something. But it's full of like alternate takes, and I read a little bit of his Wikipedia page, and I basically, this album, he kind of went into the studio and he kind of didn't know exactly what he was doing, and would have multiple versions of these songs, and sometimes 3 or 4 songs would play together into each other. And so there's a lot of weird outtakes and very different versions of all these songs, and they just recently got released on this like 6-disc collection. So if you want, 8 different versions of the same song, it's there with a terrible name.
That's incredible. And one thing that I did know about the history of that album was that Columbia Records, signed him to release it, and basically just when they were about to put it out there, he kind of like panicked, it seems like, and re-recorded the entire album.
Yeah.
Right when they had already settled on it, like they were about to release it, and he re-recorded the entire thing. And so what is like Blood on the Tracks is basically half the songs that he had, half the songs that they had planned to release and half the songs that he re-recorded last minute.
Yeah.
And he's he's definitely known for rewriting a lot, even after something's kind of normally would be set in stone. Like if you listen to his live concerts, it's like you'll hear like an entire verse that's different from the one that's on the album.
That's cool.
Maybe even more than that. He plays around with like different styles for songs a lot,
right.
And it's like that's one of the things I like about him, and that's one of the things I liked about like just kind of discovering him, because I'm not the kind of person, I don't know about you, I'm curious to know how you are about this, because like I'm not the kind of person who will look for new things very often. Like this podcast has been really interesting for me because of that. Like I'm usually the kind of person who's like, I have a few albums that I really like and I'll listen to them until I die,
Yeah.
And so, but he's been really interesting for me to listen to because I get to kind of do both with his songs, because I can listen to 3 different versions of it and hear, 5 new verses that I've never heard before.
Oh, that's really cool. That's kind of like how when Blink-182 plays What's My Age Again, sometimes they change the words to Where's My Asian Friend? Very comparable. But wait, okay, so I think no one wants to hear a white dude talk about his discovery of Bob Dylan. We'll get to my opinion later, but I think what's more interesting, especially probably to our listeners. Okay, Lucie, so talk to me about Ozzy Osbourne and Blizzard of Oz. What'd you think?
Oh, wow. I loved it.
Hell yeah.
I was like, I feel like it both confirmed and defied my expectations at the same time.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely a spookiness to the album as a whole, and like that I really enjoyed. And but there are moments that are melodic and even like from my perspective like folky, like there's that song, I forget the exact name, but parenthetical Mother Nature, I think it's called Revelation Mother Earth.
Oh yeah,
and it has that like I think really like pretty kind of like instrumental part to it that I really liked, and then like there are parts where it's like it kind of like I feel like it kind of splits the difference between something that I'm not totally acclimated to, which is like the shredding, like the kind of like, shreddy metal songs.
Yeah.
And then there are also some songs on it that are just kind of like very melodic and lovely and like, kind of like a metal light kind of that I tend to kind of like, some of those songs, I feel like they could almost be Meatloaf songs, It's
yeah.
Like, I mean, is Meatloaf is he like kind of an Ozzy ripoff, or like what's?
I think Ozzy is early 80s, his solo career is early 80s. So he was famously in Black Sabbath from like the early 70s. Pretty much kind of invented metal as we know it. I mean, there's a lot of other people that you could put in that. But so Meatloaf kind of did his own thing, and Meatloaf was kind of like theatrical and kind of, in a weird way, Do you know who produced Bat Out of Hell? Todd Rundgren produced that album.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think like Bat Out of Hell, I think is kind of like what would happen if you tried to write an Ozzy Osbourne musical. But I mean, I really like Meatloaf. I grew up listening to a lot of Meatloaf.
Yeah.
But so you listen to Blizzard of Oz. It's funny because actually the two songs that did you listen to Steal Away the Night, the last song?
Oh yeah,
I always skip those two, so I didn't even know what you were talking about because I'm like, by the time you get to like Mr. Crowley and No Bone Movies, whatever the fuck No Bone Movies is about.
I think No Bone Movies might be my favorite song.
Really?
And I have no idea what he's saying. And
No one does. It's a movie. It's like I think he's like writing about mummies or something. What the fuck is a bone movie?
I honestly thought for a second, I was so confused by it that I was like, my mind was open to anything.
Right.
And I was like, is it a movie that's so good that you, under no circumstances, will fuck while it's on?
Impossible, by the way.
Sorry, sweetheart, this is a no-bone movie.
I would wager that there are plenty of people that saw Schindler's List and were just so amazed by it that they got erect. Like, that's impossible.
Yeah, and I really like Suicide Solution.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was a really I hesitate to call it, I mean it was kind of fun. The whole album is just kind of fun.
Yeah.
And like it's definitely not as the way in which it surprised me was that like it definitely didn't seem to, it kind of contradicted the aesthetic that I got accustomed to with Ozzy Osbourne. You know, it's like all the kind of, I don't know if they're rumors or just like performance art things that he did, but like the whole like the story about like eating the bat's head and shit like that. You know, it's like it definitely didn't. It both fulfilled and contradicted that image that I had of him, kind of like the Misfits.
Right.
Like I had the same experience listening to the Misfits, where I was like, I was used to seeing all these like skeletal images and stuff, and then I listened to the album and I was like, this is like Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
Like this is, you know, this is just like fun. You know,
don't fade away.
I danced to this in a poodle skirt.
Right? Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny because the all of the stuff about Ozzy where you're like, oh, he's this like evil, weird Satanist. You're like, no, he's just a drug addict. Like his whole thing, like he did bite the head off the bat, and a lot of people like think of that like, oh, he must worship the devil and stuff. It's like, no, he was like blazed out of his mind, and he had this bat that he was gonna like. It was for a record signing or something. I'm sure someone in the YouTube comments will correct me. But basically, he was handed this bat, and he thought it was fake. And when he bit the head off, he found out it was real. And he was just, you know, like probably coked out of his mind. He's also really famous for pissing on the Alamo and getting banned from Texas.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but it's not like he's like some sort of like War of 1812 British apologist or anything. He just was fucked up. He was really fucked up, you know? The real Ozzy Osbourne is just like this little mumbly guy who apparently has been Christian all along, you know?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But it's cool.
How does this, because I've never heard any Black Sabbath. I thought that Crazy Train was Black Sabbath.
No.
But that's his solo song. How does this like compare to Black Sabbath? Is Black Sabbath heavier? Like, is it darker? Like,
it's slower and it's more. So Black Sabbath is like very. They kind of invented what people like to call doom metal, where it's like slower and a lot of like dun dun, you know, kind of sounds. And Black Sabbath, they sing a lot more about like Satan and magic and wizardry and all that stuff. They're like Lord of the Rings nerds, you know.
right.
But then with Ozzy Osbourne, it's in the early 80s. He pulls his own band together, and it's very much about just like very fast shredding. I mean, these are kind of like pop songs. Like Crazy Train could totally be a Katy Perry song if it wasn't for the crazy solo in it.
Oh yeah, totally. Like, to me, it's like, I think the only War Pigs is Black Sabbath, right?
Yeah.
So I think the only Black Sabbath song I've ever heard all the way through is War Pigs.
Which is weird because no one should listen to that song all the way through. It's like 3 hours long.
Yeah. Because I like it's interesting because like I have a bad history, a bad track record with bands that like Lord of the Rings too much.
Yeah, men that like Lord of the Rings too much, to be honest.
Yeah, that's probably more accurate. Yeah. But like, yeah, it's one of the things that I've actually been wanting to do an episode. Been thinking we should do an episode on this because like I don't think I'll ever get Led Zeppelin. Like, and like I've tried so hard to like them, and I think that it might be, and it's weird that it would be this reason, but like, I think it just might be that it reminds me too much of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Like, the whole, like, you know, the whole, you know, vibe is just too Tolkien for me.
Yeah.
You know? But it's also interesting to me that all these, like, really masculine, like, testosterone-y bands are also, like, into, like, fairies and wizards and stuff.
Every Led Zeppelin song is either about his dick or his favorite orc. I'm not a Lord of the Rings person. I watched the movies. I never read the books. I pretended I read the books. Like it never really clicked for me. I probably would watch them again as an adult. But what do you not like about Lord of the Rings? Just curious.
You know, that's the weird thing is that like I don't really have a problem with it. Like it seems like a fine story. I'm like it's the kind of thing where it's like if I had discovered this as a kid, I'm sure I would love it. I'm sure I would be obsessed with it. But it's just like sometimes maybe sometimes I'm irrationally resentful of things that I discover in adulthood. Yeah. that are really meant for children to like enrich the you know, experiences of children. You know, it's like maybe part of me is just like, you know, I feel like I missed out on something really fun. Yeah. You know, and now I'm like, I just don't understand, you know. But because every adult I know who likes it a lot, like when you talk to them about it, like their eyes just kind of light up, and they're like, "When I was a kid, it just like transported me to this new world," you know. Yeah. I'm like, all right, well, I missed that boat, you know. Yeah. Well, I
mean, I personally like. I mean, 2 Minutes Late Night as a show probably wouldn't exist if Jordan and I both weren't kind of clinging to our childhood in a weird way. You know, like even right now, like I have a monthly column on Metal Injection, weekly column called 2019, where I'm looking back at albums that I liked in like the early hardcore metal scene and trying to like look at them with, you know, 19 years of maturity and being like, okay, does this really hold up? And I'm finding it really hard to say that things are bad because I'm like, oh, this reminds me of that one time I was with my friend in a car and we smoked a cigarette, you know? It's hard to let go of those feelings of like nostalgia. Like what do you still like that you liked when you were a kid besides Bob Dylan? Because we can get to that.
Man, that's a really good question, actually. I might have to think about that for a little bit because I think that it, you know, okay, so here's one.
Okay, I'm excited.
Music-wise, Sublime. Like
What? Yes. I did not see that coming.
Because it was like, Sublime is like, I look back at it, I listened to, and I don't even remember the name of the album. They were like seminal album.
Oh, the one with the back tattoo where the guy has the tattoo of the band name on his back?
Yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll listen to that song, What I Got, still from time to time.
Yeah.
And that part where he's like, I can play the guitar like a motherfucking riot, and then he plays maybe the lamest guitar solo that you could possibly imagine. And it's like, and I'm like, I know this is not great, but it's still gonna like give me an endorphin rush every time I listen to it. Because it was the first like naughty album that I ever listened to. Yeah. But yeah, like so that's probably one where I'd be like,
funny. I did not see that coming.
Yeah.
Lucy, there's a Spencer's Gift in your heart, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Yeah. It's like it's definitely you know, it's definitely the kind of thing where, like, people just, like, people go through, like, I feel like people go through waves of just, like, reassessing everything they liked, and they're just, like, people sometimes will just, like, bury their relationships to certain pop culture just out of like sheer will, you know. They'll just be like, that belongs to my adolescence, and I'll never cop to liking it ever again.
Yeah.
You know? But like, but yeah, it's like, there are certain things where it's like, yeah, I get it. Like, you can't, you're never gonna look at it and not be, under its power to some extent.
Right. Well, it's weird because I think there's two ways to look at that. Like, one is kind of like I'm in third grade, so the stuff I liked in second grade isn't cool anymore. And like,
right.
It's abandoned. But another thing is, like, I don't know, I feel like for me, I've definitely, like, as I've gotten older and matured a little bit, I've tried to, like, release some of my older opinions. It's like a weird kind of, like, toxic masculinity thing, I think, to be, like, one of those people that can't accept that the things that they like are bad. You can still like them. It's okay to like bad things. I'm drinking La Croix. It tastes like perfume. But, you know, like, Ozzy Osbourne is, like, not good. There's no one that's going to say that Ozzy Osbourne is the greatest singer of all time. He's not a good singer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I never knew that, like, I mean, so he's not recognized as, like, a great musician?
Musician is not really, he's more of like a front man. Like, you go to see Ozzy because it's an experience. Like, I just saw Ozzy this year. The dude is 70 years old. He's running around clapping his hands, and you know that Ozzy Osbourne has like a weird like FDR thing where nobody knows that he's in a wheelchair when he's not on stage. I can't confirm that, but he's you know, he has health problems. Everybody knows he's got the shakes, and he sounds exactly the same that he's always sounded because he's never sounded particularly great. It's the same thing with Van Halen too. It's like David Lee Roth. He screams, he wails, he makes like bird noises, but he isn't like, he's not an opera singer. He's not someone that's regarded for his technical skill. It's fun. It's like going to the amusement park, you know? It's like a roller coaster that's going to kill you. You know that it's dangerous, but it's fun. That's all that matters.
Yeah, you know a little girl got scalped by it last week, but, you know.
Yeah. David Lee Roth totally scalped a little girl. I would bet money on it.
So was Ozzy Osbourne, this is so interesting to me. Like, was Ozzy Osbourne, was he a great guitarist? Was he a great, like...
he doesn't play any instruments. He just sings. He just sings.
What?
He might play harmonica because he did some jail time, but he's just this weird dude that just kind of, he's like a weird, like, shaman. And, like, when he first started doing like stuff with Black Sabbath, he was just like, I like the wizards like me, you know, and no one was singing like that. So you're like, this is really cool. And then around this solo time, he would write these awesome songs. Like there's a song that isn't on this album, it's on a later album called Bark at the Moon that's about werewolves. And it's like, it is the quintessential pop song. Like, it really sounds like it could have been something that like Hanson did if they sung about werewolves. And it's got this amazing guitar solo in it. He finds good instruments and he writes. He doesn't even write his songs. He just Ozzy's them. But like, if you look at like Crazy Train, which is like his biggest song, it's a song that makes no sense, and it works because he just sounds really weird, and he's got this very young, amazingly talented guitarist doing crazy solos on all these songs. And it's kind of the antithesis of what he was doing with Black Sabbath, if you think about it. So
he's kind of like the Flavor Flav of metal.
Yeah, I would say he's more like the drunk Chuck D than the Flavor Flav. He might be somewhere in the middle. No, yeah. He's like, he doesn't have technical skill, but he's very magnetic. Like, people like watching him. Maybe he's like the Dane Cook of metal. But what about Bob Dylan? So Bob Dylan is not a good singer. Does everybody know that?
So, well, yeah, maybe let's start with, how did you feel about Blood on the Tracks? What was your...
I really liked it. I didn't think I was going to like it. I really liked it.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
You know what I really liked about Blood on the Tracks is I knew like the whole thing about like Bob Dylan is a poet. Like, I've heard that my whole life, and I'm not a lyrics person. It's very hard for me to get lyrics the first time around. but I realized that he's kind of a storyteller. Like all these songs are like stories.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I loved Idiot Wind. I thought Idiot Wind was one of the coolest songs I've ever heard.
Idiot Wind is definitely in my top 5 Bob Dylan songs of all time.
Yeah.
And it's also one of those songs where when you listen to different versions of it, you get different verses, and the story changes slightly from, recording to recording. So that's an interesting choice. I mean, what did you like about it specifically?
I loved that it was like a diss track. It was like Tupac, but it was 8 minutes long. And you know what's weird is that like I said on a couple episodes, like I heard the song Hurricane and I really liked it, but it was it was like a 3-hour song to me. And I don't understand why it's like verse, chorus, like there's so much. And now I'm like listening to it, I'm like, of course the songs are that long. The story isn't over. It's not about the music. The music's just like the backing track. It's like when you go see like someone do stand up and they have a bass player behind them, like it's just to guide you along the way so you don't like he's more of like a spoken word poet, I guess, than a musician, which is pretty interesting to me. Because is he well known for his guitar playing or?
I think that when people really go deep on him and like, to me, it's like, it's hard for me. I don't really understand the theory of guitar or anything. I enjoy his guitar playing, but I couldn't necessarily articulate why.
Yeah.
I've heard people who go deep on him explain that it's like, yeah, he did do interesting things with like, kind of like chord progression structure and stuff. Like, and that like, and he chose backing musicians really carefully, and like he definitely, was a director, of the music, even like I don't know if he plays piano on certain tracks that I'm thinking of, but like Sooner or Later, One of Us Must Know is like a really interesting, kind of chord progression from like, verse to chorus, like verse to bridge to chorus. And like, there are certain like subtle things that I think people argue he does that are innovative. But to me, what's always been the most compelling is when the backing music is like fairly simple, but the way that he's interacting lyrically with it is complicated and surprising, and it's like it never really stays static. It's like there are certain songs that are really repetitive. Like Maggie's Farm is a very repetitive song.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, and it's a very that's a very repetitive song. But then there are certain songs that like might sound repetitive on first listening, but then you listen again and you realize that he's kind of doing different things in every verse, either with his voice or with the backing, So, but yeah, I think you're right. I think that, in a lot of ways, his best songs are stories, and like the music is just kind of accentuating it and enhancing it,
Yeah. I also love the way... oh, sorry. No, say what you're saying.
Oh, sorry. And it makes sense because he has an interesting history as a folk musician, because he started out very much as like a classical folk musician, and a lot of his early songs were stories, and that's kind of the history of folk. It's like, it's a musical genre that kind of was at the same time very political, and so a lot of folk songs were stories about people who, kind of heroic figures, in protests and kind of like progressive protest history, and at a certain point in his career, Bob Dylan really made a point of breaking from that, and he wrote an album called Another Side of Bob Dylan was basically a big fuck you to the 1960s protest movement.
That's awesome.
He was basically saying like, fuck you guys, like I'm not... But, basically there's a song called It Ain't Me, Babe, where he's basically, the message behind it is largely thought to be a message to the protest movement, saying, like, I'm not going to, like, write songs around the movement. I'm going to write songs about whatever I want to write about, kind of. But then what's interesting about it, I think, is that he kind of returns to that style in a more complex way. But he kind of returns to that storytelling tradition with songs like Hurricane, but also with like more personal songs like Tangled Up in Blue or Idiot Wind, So I think that's a really interesting like component of his history as an artist, is that like he kind of broke from it and then ends up going back to it in his own way. That's, very, very unique and innovative. It's not at all like a like Hurricane is not at all a cookie cutter protest song, but it's still a protest song,
Yeah.
At its heart.
Okay. So this is interesting because, so we've talked about Bob Dylan, we've talked about Ozzy Osbourne, and I think they have more in common than we would have ever thought. It could also be that I'm drunk with power. But, so you talk about Bob Dylan had had a song that basically was like, that was the old me, and I don't necessarily believe that. That was just what I was doing. Ozzy Osbourne put out an album in 2001 called Down to Earth. It came out like 3 weeks after 9/11. And
wow.
Yeah, and it's not good. But Ozzy is still like, I think he's like 50 at this time, so he's still like young enough that he could potentially put out something good. And he has this song on it called Gets Me Through, and the opening lyrics are like, I'm not the kind of person you think I am. I'm not the Antichrist or the Iron Man. And the whole song is just about how he's just like a person. And it's not, he's not what everybody thinks he is. He's not the Prince of Darkness. He's just a British guy who may or may not like Christ. So maybe Bob Dylan and Ozzy have more in common than we.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting that he has a song like that because Bob Dylan, on another side of Bob Dylan, had a song called All I Really Want to Do, and it's a song mostly about what he doesn't want to do. He's like, I don't want to categorize you, stigmatize you or whatever. There's a lot of blah blah-izing you that he doesn't want to do. And it's all I really want to do is baby be friends with you. And it's like that. So they both had kind of turning points where they were like, I'm not this guy anymore. I'm this guy.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
So
they're both kind of petulant, basically.
Yeah. Did you catch anything? Did you as you were listening to Blizzard of Oz think like, oh, this kind of is like Dylan?
Interesting question. Like, I think that in a way, the albums, one similarity I saw between the albums was that they both have kind of like a duplicitousness to them where it's like in the Ozzy album, he'll go from like a very like high energy kind of metal song to something more like melodic and unexpected on my part. And like, in the Bob Dylan album, like one of the things I've always liked about it is that it's basically a guy going through a messy breakup, having a meltdown, and then immediately apologizing for it in the next song.
Yeah.
It'll be like a song like Idiot Wind, and then there will be a song like You're a Big Girl Now, which is like so like saccharine and like melodic and, apologetic kind of.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of like it has that kind of, duplicitous nature to it. I feel like both albums have that going on in them.
Yeah, plus they're both about trains, but they don't really talk about the trains as much as you want them to.
Yeah.
Like, how did blood get on the tracks? Who got hit? What's going on?
Yeah.
I want to know.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. They are both about trains.
Yeah. How much is a ticket for the Crazy Train?
Yeah.
Where do you think it goes?
Yes. They're just a couple of Reverend Lovejoys, these two.
From The Simpsons, or is that something that I should know what that reference means?
No, that's from The Simpsons.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
They just want to play with their trains.
Yeah.
And get over women.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's cool. I mean, the fact that both are about a divorce, I think, is pretty eerie, actually.
Yeah. So what happens next for Bob Dylan? I guess what comes out with this album? Like, yeah. So what's in the future for 77-year-old Bob Dylan? Is he gonna die? No, I mean though, like.
Honestly, he better die.
Yeah, right.
Because I feel like he only has about 10 more years where people are gonna like where people are gonna remember him enough to give him a good obit. So like, yeah, I hope. Part of me is like rooting for him. That's like, you put out a nice last farewell album. Yeah. You put out a couple of good albums recently. Yeah. Maybe it's time to say adieu.
Well, he's got all those Marvel movie cameos he's got to get done. Then he can die.
That's the most like twisted. Like I feel like I just announced the most twisted reason to hope for a person to die.
No, that's real. It's like the classic Michael Jordan thing. He went back into the game and he ruined his career stats because he sucked when he came back. And I don't know anything about basketball other than Space Jam, and I know that. So yeah.
But yeah, he'll probably. I mean, I could see him putting out another album. It's like it's getting to the point where it's like, how good could it be at this point? Where it's, he's probably gonna, maybe he'll put out some Frank Sinatra covers. I don't know. Yeah, like his.
Have you?
I'll listen to them.
Have you listened to modern? Have you listened to anything new by Bob Dylan?
Newish.
Yeah.
I really liked. There's a song called Duquesne Whistle that I really like. It's very old timey, very spunky.
Yeah.
And then there was another one that I wish I remembered the name of, but it was pretty good. Like it was a longer form song about a shipwreck, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. He basically at some point he decided to make Titanic in song form.
Sure,
and it
why
was
not?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about Ozzy Osbourne? What's he got going on?
You know what's funny is him and his son Jack have a TV show. They have a show where they just drive around. It's like a road trip show with him and his kid, and then so Black Sabbath reunited and then broke up because they all were like, we're too old. We got to stop doing this. And then Ozzy is kind of, I don't know if he's put out an album recently. I mean, the weird thing about the newer stuff is that there's no real reason to listen to it. It's not like it's going to be amazing, but it's also, he's got this, the backing band gets younger and younger. It's like he has, on Blizzard of Oz, he has this really young guitarist named Randy Rhoads, who is really going amazing. People love him. He was an incredible guitarist. And on the night of one of their tours, Randy and his friend get in an airplane, like a tiny 2-seater airplane, do a loop-de-loop, crash in a lake, and die. And Ozzy sees it. Like Ozzy and Sharon watch it, and like so.
Jeez.
Every album after this there's like a little bit of darkness in it because he loved this kid and he thought this kid was going to be amazing, and he died literally because they were all doing drugs and being rock stars, and that's what happens. Yeah.
Oh God.
And especially now, he's kind of been a lot more reflective. Like if you listen to this on Spotify, there's the bonus tracks, and one of them is just a random solo that Randy did. They found like the original masters from this album, and him, Ozzy, and his son, and a few other people, they listened to this for the first time in 30 years together, and there's like a really famous video of him listening to it, and he's just, blown away because it's his old friend. It's pretty sad.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty sad. Ozzy kind of had a pretty sad life, and he ended up getting sober for a while and then relapsing, and he's just a character. He's just a really weird character. He's more of a folk hero than a musician, I would say.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Yeah, maybe Bob Dylan would do like the Ballad of Ozzy Osbourne.
I would fucking love to hear that.
Right?
And I wish there was a way. I wish he was on social media so that we could lobby for that to happen. But that's probably why he's not.
Bob Dylan's not on social media? Then who's sending me all those DMs with that 70-year-old cock? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
yeah, so
that's great.
What was your favorite track on Blizzard of Oz?
I'm gonna go No Bone Movie.
Yeah. Okay.
I really liked that song.
Yeah.
It was so fun to listen to, and I never actually got. Usually, I look at the lyrics.
Yeah.
But I kind of Usually, I'll listen to the album, then read the lyrics, then take another listen. But listening to No Bone, once I got to No Bone Movies, I was like, I kind of want to not read the lyrics.
Yeah.
Just so I'll be totally in the dark. Because I was hoping you'd have an explanation for it.
I don't know anything about it. I don't want to look it up. The most interesting thing about that song to me is that on the song credits, it has the most credits. Like, everybody who worked on that album have writing credits for it. Like, even the drummer, Lee Kerslake, has a writing credit on that song. Like, he definitely added something into it, and I don't know what it's fucking about at all.
I hope that was like their shorthand for all hands on deck. It's like, is this a No Bone Movie situation? Yeah, it's No Bone Movie. We all gotta be there.
Yeah, hopefully it was an inside joke.
Yeah.
But that must have been really interesting for you to listen to. Like, the first song, I Don't Know, it's such a good song, and it's one of the songs that he always opens with, because this is his first solo album. So this is like the first thing that people heard of Ozzy Osbourne by himself is I Don't Know, and it's the beginning of it is great. It's like your classic 80s metal. But then there's that weird, like, singing bridge part where it kind of turns into a ballad. What'd you think about that?
Oh, yeah. I thought that, like, I loved the whole song. And that was one of the things that I really liked about the album in general, is that it was just, like, I thought, like, every song was, like, dynamic enough to really, like, you know, to really be satisfying, you know. It's like I really didn't, like, I was never watching the clock, you know, listening to any of the songs on that album. And, like, I think it made me realize that doing the Pod Minutes to Cast night, like, I love how I just called it the Pod Minutes to Cast night, like my grandfather would call anything from the early 2000s. You know, the Seinfeld?
Yeah, the Pokemons.
It's pretty, yeah. But like, doing Pod Minutes to Cast night, I feel like it's definitely been an exercise in, like, recalibrating what I think of as music a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just, like, a lot of things that are, you know, getting used to, like, even just getting used to synths, like, and stuff was, like, a kind of a interesting process, you know. But this was definitely one of those albums where it actually felt familiar to me. Like, it felt like something that I would listen to, like, just slightly modified, you know. So yeah, I like that. I really liked all the kind of the different musical choices that they make halfway through a song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I definitely really like this album. I would listen to this album again for sure.
Hell yeah. I love that. I would listen to Bob Dylan again. I would listen to Blood on the Tracks. That was a good album.
Yeah.
Really
what was your favorite song?
It definitely had to be Idiot Wind. I also love the way that he says, like, idiot. Like he's Ren from Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah. You're an idiot, babe.
Yeah. All of the, like, I guess the Bob Dylanisms I really dug. And I think that's something that Ozzy and Bob Dylan both have in common, is that they both need subtitles when they talk.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
But I liked that a lot. And I also really liked If You See Her, Say Hello, too.
Oh, yeah, that's a great song.
It's a really great song. It was really cool. And Shelter from the Storm. I think that I like about Bob Dylan a lot is that he repeats the song title, or, like, the main idea, so many times. And at first I thought that was going to be annoying. Like, I actually listened to this album twice. And when I listened to Shelter from the Storm, every time he said Shelter from the Storm, I was like, I get it. The song's called Shelter from the Storm. But now it's like a weird kind of, like, it's like a page break. It's almost like Chapter 2, Shelter from the Storm. Chapter 3, more Shelter from the Storm.
Even sheltery.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I thought that was cool. I think that, I don't know if I'm going to listen to the bootleg series, because I don't think I really want to hear 19 different versions of this song. But if someone's like, if you're out there and you're a fan of this podcast and also a fan of Bob Dylan, so you're Lucie, tell me which version of Idiot Wind to listen to. I would love to check it out.
Yeah, my favorite version of Idiot Wind is from something called the bootleg tapes, where it's a double album of just him kind of doing, like, raw recordings of the songs.
Yeah.
And that version of Idiot Wind is, like, a little bit slower. It's a little bit more ballady. And I really like that version. But the album, the Blood on the Tracks version, is really great too.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what's your favorite song from Blizzard of Oz?
That's a good question. I would say that, Crazy Train is, like, the national anthem for my people. But no one says the national anthem is their favorite song. In a weird way, I actually, like, as I've gotten older, I really like Softer Ozzy because I think it's such a cool fuck you. Like, no one expects it. I think that Goodbye to Romance is such a cool, weird song.
Oh, yeah. I really liked Goodbye to Romance, too. Yeah.
Have you ever heard Mama, I'm Coming Home?
No.
It's 90s Ozzy. So it's like 10 years after this album, and it's co-written by Lemmy from Motorhead, and it's a really cool song, and it's just a song about, like, either his mom or his wife, who knows, but it's just a song about how, like, he needs to be taken care of because he's falling apart, and it's kind of vulnerable, and it's just a really cool song. I like it a lot. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Goodbye to Romance I liked a lot.
Yeah.
I think my favorite Blood on the Tracks song is it changes every couple of years or so, but I think my favorite song right now is You're a Big Girl Now.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the songs that I would skip over a lot when I was first listening to it, and like over the years I've just really come to appreciate it, and it's like I think it's a really unique, not that I can't think of any songs like this, but like I think it's a pretty unique song for both a love song and a breakup song, because it's kind of this. I feel like it's the only song on the album too where it's more centered on the person who's usually like objectified in an album like this, which is like the person on the other side of the breakup, kind of, because it is kind of a breakup album. And to me, I've really grown to appreciate it as a song where it's just like a very like tender image of the person who's just broke your heart. And, it's kind of a very like, it's like the one song on the album where I can actually still kind of envision like the couple and not just like the pain from the aftermath, kind of, which is what I feel like what's usually cathartic about breakup albums and why people keep going back to them. But like there's it's kind of like the whole message behind the song is like, I know you're fucking other guys now, but I get it. It's like I feel like they're so, and it's like I feel like it does that. I've heard songs like that before, but I feel like it does it particularly well. And I've kind of grown to appreciate it over the years. Yeah,
Bob Dylan's a cuck. It's cool.
Yeah,
fuck my wife.
Exactly.
Let's do it. Fuck my wife, please.
The Lonesome Cuck by Bob Dylan.
Blood on the Cuck.
Oh, God. The Metal Mansplain for last time we did this was, I was wondering what the difference was between David Lee Roth and Stevie Ray Vaughan. Because I realized that during our entire episode featuring Van Halen's 1984, that the entire time we were talking about David Lee Roth, I thought we were talking about Stevie Ray Vaughan. That was the person I was picturing in my head. So I was curious to know what the difference between these two was exactly. And so we got a few responses. We have at Peddler Music saying, the one common thread with all of those people is that Tim Allen sold them coke.
That's probably true.
Yeah. We have at Fast Radio Tweet saying, both did a ton of coke, but only one OD'd on Gravity.
Yeah, I heard he bought it from John Denver.
And then we have at MB's Sobchak, Brian Marsh on Twitter saying, David Lee Roth is a sentient suntan lotion bottle, and and Stevie Ray Vaughan is the devil's revenge for that whole Robert Johnson / Crossroads debacle.
It's funny because in my head, I don't really know what Stevie Ray Vaughan looks like, so I just imagine Crocodile Dundee. Like, oi, that's not a knife, that's a mountain smash.
But thank you for answering my question. I think that's definitely cleared a lot of things up for me. So I appreciate it. But which one does a better cover of California Girls?
So that was Drew and Lucie, Drewcy Fruit, talking about Bob Dylan and Ozzy Osbourne, trying something new. Also, everybody that we love bailed on us. So this is what happens. If you liked it, sound off on social media. Maybe we'll do this again. Maybe we'll never do it again. If you didn't like it, just, try to attack the other three. Yeah. Or keep it to yourself. I know it's hard on the internet, but you can try. So, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at the Steinbag, and you can see me on January 29th at the Shanty for the Dan Charles and DVD show. And that sounds made up, but it's real. and and you can see me on February 2nd at the Creek in the Cave for Jackknife Comedy. Nice. I'm banned from the Creek in the Cave. Oh, really? Yeah. Good for you. Yeah. I there was a comedy show there in like 2011, and I threw we had like 5 minutes to do whatever you want. So me and a friend had a boxing match, and I got blood all over the creek. And also, it's extremely illegal. Extremely illegal. Blood on the Creek. Yeah. Drew Kaufman's new album. Tangled Up in Jews. Hey, it's Drew Kaufman. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at diet_Hellboy. Also have my Instagram for my photography, Drew Kaufman Photography, posting show pictures and behind the scenes and all that crap. I also have a new weekly column at Metal Injection called 29 Scene, where I'm looking back at albums from the scene, and you know what that is, and you're going to read it, and you're going to like it, because you like all this shit still if you listen to our podcast. Also, there's a new episode of 2 Minutes Late Night coming out really soon. We're not officially announcing the date yet, because if we do, everything will go wrong, but I assure you that there will be very soon episode 7 of 8 coming out, and then, of course, the finale, we'll get that out to you as soon as the new one is done. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for doing Patreon, which we have, and you can give us money. You can also Venmo Lucie. Yes. Give Lucie money. Since Katie isn't here, don't give Katie any money. She's got a very nice apartment. I've seen it. All right. Bye. Bye.